Okay, so what we have here is every day students go hungry without the right access to accessible foods. This list, although extensive, is actually minimal in comparison to the reality that students face every day on campus. What we have here is that's just a summary of some of the reasons why students go hungry. For example, we have financial limitation. Some students can't afford food. We've also noticed that today, the last four presentations, we see that there's a need for education when it comes to food. We've seen that students lack the education on what to eat, the right foods to intake, and also how to cook. We also see that students suffering from food insecurity barely have any dignified or anonymous access to food. And we see things such as cultural diversity on campus within students also breeding social isolation in terms of getting food and getting what food best fits their cultural variants. And then we see that students also do not know where to seek support. There's a lack of support systems set up for students with food insecurity on how to access sustainable foods. And we've seen that students often avoid food banks due to the recent stigma that's been going around, especially with international students.
When we empathize with this problem, it was just like lived experiences for all of us when we discussed this. It is a very painful experience just to throw food away. And just imagine how many people go hungry on a daily basis. When I first arrived in Canada, like 3 weeks time, my department struggled to really get individuals to collect food after an event. And we are trying to see how do we ensure sustainable consumption of food. And that is why our group is trying to ask this question: how might we distribute or redistribute excess food that are left over after each event? So this is the problem space that our group is looking at.
Thanks, Lydia. So we came up with 4 different ideas in our group, and actually a lot of those ideas overlap with a lot of the work that a lot of the brilliant work that's already been talked about. And one of the ideas was to use an autonomous vehicle, but that was too ambitious for now. So we kind of combined 4 ideas, and we came up with a 5th idea, and we did some viability checking for that. We used the weighted decision matrix, and indeed our 5th idea sounded really good to our team. So we all worked on a storyboard and we brought it all together. So this is our collaborative storyboard. It addresses, like in the first image, you can see there, students are hungry, a lot of food goes to waste, as Lydia said. And we thought it would be really nice to have a food mobile that maybe every once a week, we don't know quite what the frequency might be. It might go to one location once a week. Maybe it could be bi-weekly, but it goes to different places on campus where a student doesn't have to come alone, doesn't have to go to a food bank. This is a solution instead of a food bank. This is a community food truck, which goes to different places, and it takes care of isolation, but it's also a community education hub and it is student run. Our solution is that we hire co-op students. We have a fund for co-op students to work for not-for-profit organizations. So we will hire these are paid co-op positions, and students come and work. They run the food truck for students. We also have a very diverse student population at the University of Waterloo, and those students bring their cultural spices, or they give us a list. But then also people come and whether it's after an event or with food services, wherever food can be just redistributed safely, we are a hub and we are working with food services, and a lot of food comes to the truck or a central hub with food services from community gardens, and people make different kinds of foods, and we even hand out recipes. And people through student websites, through the campus food bank, people still know when or where this food truck's coming. They learn to cook, and our hope is that people are not hungry in isolation, and there's no stigma about going and getting food, that they can come to this food truck. Anybody can come to this food truck, because we are also we are thinking of also offering subsidized food. You know, people can come, take raw materials away. If people choose, they can come and cook, learn how to cook, and take away food, and they can do all kinds of things. So our prototype focuses on limiting food waste, mobilizing food accessibility, and also keep on rechecking what processes exist and how can we work with different partners on campus to make this happen. So one of the things, so a food truck business can cost anything between $40,000 to $200,000, but a lot of times the costs are reduced if there is funding and partnership. We thought the University of Waterloo already has a vehicle, like, you know, they have a whole department that has vehicles, and we could leverage that, and maybe that will reduce the cost. We haven't quite fully worked that out. And I'm going to hand it over to Zelda.
So for the impact, we looked at the economic, social, and environmental aspects. We do believe that this is potentially scalable. We could do a pilot project here at the University of Waterloo and then duplicate it in other places within the city or across other campuses across Canada and other countries even. We're trying to make it somewhat of a one-stop shop and a community hub that addresses a lot of the needs that we've seen come forth over the course of today. And then next up.
So one thing I want to add to that is there's also potential to work with businesses or people, entrepreneurs who want to start a food truck business, but they don't necessarily have the means. And if they were to partner with the city and different groups, we could actually work even for funding for them, and then they could become partners.
All right. All the introduction for the idea of food truck, and following will be the Q&A section. Thank you.
Yeah, so awesome. This is a really creative idea. I really love it. And I love the aspect of bringing, again, like a lot of the factors that are where there's gaps and seeing something that can fill that gap. The idea of a food truck sounds really joyful to me, especially the idea of having university involved. So having a university fleet vehicle potentially being transformed into something like this run by university co-ops could be a really cool idea. It made me think of a few other organizations currently that are doing like similar but not quite the same idea, like the Cambridge Food Bank with their mobile food market, Youth and Food Systems out of Seed to Diversity, which is doing like pop-up markets, and trying to address capturing and gleaning some food locally and redistributing it on a larger scale. But what I liked most about this idea was that it was hyper local. It was in the university community itself, and noticing the food waste and trying to actually like turn it back around and make it accessible in a way that also generated community connection. So I really liked it. I thought it was really cool, and would be awesome to see around campus.
Yeah. I really like the list of I get the list of factors in the beginning, and noticed the social stigma one, which was kind of, I like the way you addressed it, because it was kind of thinking it's funny how when there's like free food at work and you get it, it's great. And it's not shameful at all. And it's not even shameful to be like, oh, free food, but if it's free food because you need it, it suddenly is shameful. So it's funny how that paradigm works. Ironically, I'm about to not counter, but to add on to say, you said you love that was hyper local. One of my first things that I thought was like from a perspective of a large organization that hosts a lot of events, it would be so cool to expand it and for us to be able to call someone and say, you know, we're having our staff symposium, there's almost definitely going to be food left over. Right. Can we organize a collection at the end? Right. And to have an easy way for us to do that, because we're not gonna, we can't have a staff member take it somewhere, right? Like it's just not gonna happen. But if we have like easy access to this, like we'd probably be more than happy to pack it up and have a drop off, someone, you know, pick it up or whatever you want, kind of like reverse skip the dishes, I guess.
I'm curious for that one, because I know there's rules for that as to whether or not you're allowed to repack food once it's been open, because we've had that problem too, like, so I used to do student run programs and stuff like that, we'd have leftover food, and they would only let us give away the food that's not been touched. But then we'd have half a tray left of like food that's like open, you know, like rice and stuff, and they'd be like, you're not allowed to be giving that to others unless it's like members who are there and they're with them. We're not actually allowed giving that, so I'm curious to know how.
Yeah, so around a lot of that, so I know
Yeah.
I'm from the city of London,
Okay,
and so a lot of that is etiquette and not necessarily a hard and fast rule. So I know that for the city of London, they've set up a food truck that will go around to businesses that have leftover foods and will take in those foods into their refrigerated truck and then deliver it to like my sister's place and those vehicles. So they become the go-to place. And then conversely, from a sustainability point, people start focusing more on making sure they have an RSVP and start making better orders potentially. And so that food waste in the back end sometimes goes down as well. And then as for other uses for the food truck as well, there's potentially in the spring, there's festivals, all sorts of opportunities to have the truck and that education, that community piece, students managing it and taking it out to the different festivals and having access to another audience. And again, food festivals have tons of wastage potentially every night, every week. And so it'd be great to be able to capture those meals as well.
So Dara and Will, who's not here today, both have they were our kind of experts on this. They have extensive experience working in the food industry. And so did you want to add anything to that?
Oh, it's just, I've worked in better grocery store, better grocery store. Anything that's been open that no one eats just gets thrown out. And I know also I basic that I'm to call them out right there. Yeah. Expiry dates were one thing. Some the date was expired is in the garbage can. And we see some people try to get into our garbage bins to get some access to this food and then they get kicked out because that's not allowed. So that was just something I brought to the group and I told them that this is what's going on. These big organizations and the restaurants and everything, this is what's really going on. And I tried to scale that into the university and see how it applies to our project.
And so that would be a big education piece too that we could do is the difference between expiration date, due before date. Because again, there's lots and lots of misconceptions around that. And so if you have a food truck, it could be a billboard to share that kind of information and it can switch over, trade over. So again, it can be signs of the times, seasonal, cultural, so many aspects that it can take on. And as for funding, so there are some endowment funds on campus, potentially between each faculty, and especially with COVID, a lot of those funds haven't been totally utilized. There's some issues around like insurance and who houses the trucks, but places like the Kitchener-Waterloo, they have a whole entire fleet. And so there might be possibilities for synergies around that piece.
I feel like this is a really good business model. Like it could potentially run like self-sustaining as well, especially with some of the policies and laws coming down the pipe around like the legalities of not wasting food and not throwing away food. And people needing, and they're going to need to find new places to send the food once it's like best before, but still good to eat in that window. There's an organization in Guelph that's reminding me of too called The Seed, and they do a lot of cleaning food and then have like really good chefs making like amazing dishes with this food, and then selling it back to community and having one arm selling it back to community, making an income, and another arm that's doing like giveaway food and community celebration. So I see a lot of potential of this as a business model.
And then one last aspect too, so we have housed here in Greenhouse, they do the Indigenous lunch once a week, and the host of the event switches out to different faculties, so there's that cross-pollination piece. So again, we can really see that as such the business opportunities around that, but that cross-pollination between the community, between the campus, the different services that are available, that these different hosts can come forward and host a meal. And collected maybe from these community gardens that have this abundance of food, have this truck go around and gather that food and share that.
As an evolver, I just want to say this was such an awesome experience. So big hand of applause for all of them.
I do not want